I'm standing here on the ramp of the so-called new brickworks, which was one of several factories inside the camp. And in this factory, prisoners had to produce bricks. Originally, the Nazi plan was to use these bricks to build giant representative buildings in the city center of Hamburg. That plan never came to fruition, however, and instead the bricks were then sold to construction companies. I want to focus on the conditions in the work details where the prisoners had to work in this brick production. One of these work details was the canal you can see behind me, which had to be dug out by prisoners. And another work details were the clay pits. Because if you want to make bricks, you need clay. That's the raw material. And prisoners had to dig out this clay in this whole area that you can see behind me. These wagons that you can see behind me, they're called tipper wagons. And they were used to transport the clay the prisoners had to dig out to the factory. And the work here in the clay pits was actually one of the worst work details in the whole camp. Prisoners had to work for up to 12 hours a day. They had to dig out the clay by hand, only using shovels. It was very heavy and sticky. Once they had shoveled it into these tipper wagons, they then had to push these tipper wagons by hand right up to where I'm now standing, the foot of the ramp. Only here was then finally a machine used to pull up the tipper wagons to the factory. Many prisoners did not survive this work detail. Once the bricks were finished in the factory, they had to be transported to the city center of Hamburg. And that was done mostly with boats. And for that to be possible, prisoners had to build a canal where these boats could then go to the city center. And I want to now show you this canal. The canal behind me is about 600 meters long, and it was dug out completely by concentration camp prisoners. At the end, it connects to a river, the Elbe, which already existed at the time, but prisoners still had to work on a stretch of several kilometers to widen that river. And that actually means that the prisoners were visible to the local population, because this river, the Elbe, runs right through the surrounding villages. The working conditions in this work detail were similarly as horrendous as the work details in the clay pits. One prisoner who had to work in this work detail was Michał Piotrowski, a Polish survivor who had the following to say about his experience. We carried soil from one bank of the canal to the other over a narrow plank. The plank was swaying, the wooden boards were smeared with mud and slippery, and the prisoners only had wooden shoes on their feet. It was very difficult to keep your balance. The wheelbarrow slipped from your hands and slid into the water. The prisoner then had to jump into the water and pull the wheelbarrow out of the swampy morass to the shore. This was an impossible task for those who could not swim. We are now inside the former brickworks, and if you look around today, it looks quite empty. But actually, there were large ovens, so-called kilns, in these side wings. And the factory as a whole was very modern at the time, with state-of-the-art equipment, and much of the work process was automated in here. And if you look at that, in contrast to the almost archaic working conditions outside, I think the two different goals that the SS had become very clear, which was exploitation of labor for economic gain on the one hand, and extermination through labor on the other.